Hi, everyone. Welcome to part two of the solution. In the first part, I gave out pretty detailed information on how we went through the grammar of the poem, specifically the first stanza, because it is very important that you interpret the poem properly. And I outlined the reasons why that's the case. And that also ties in with Jack said about English mattering. So in this part, at least in the beginning, I'm going to try to go through it really quickly just to show you guys the ending part of the solution. I'm not going to go into the grammar detail as deep because this video would take forever, but I'm just going to go through it quick first just to appease those who don't really have that much patience to sit through a long video. This video is probably going to still end up being long, but I'm going to try to go through the ending or the entire solution quickly first, as I said, because I don't want this to drag on. I want you to be able to just see the beginning and get a clear picture of what's going on. Okay, here's the entire poem, and it's in a grid, but the grid really doesn't have anything to do with this. You don't have to put the poem in a grid. The only reason why I'm showing it to you in a grid is because I want to make it easier for you to see how the columns line up and that we didn't just move things randomly. And the poem itself, we didn't take any words out. We didn't take any spaces out. We didn't change the spelling of anything. There's no ciphers, no anagrams, nothing weird going on. It's very straightforward. All we're doing is following the poem as he wrote it. And in order to do that, you have to really understand what he's saying. You have to look at the phrases he used. You can't take each word on their own. You have to look at the context. And the context is outlined in the message up at the top. On page 131 and 132 in the Thrill of the Chase, the last paragraph before the poem sets the context. And note the colon at the end. In other words, he doesn't end the last paragraph prior to displaying the poem in the book. He says, I knew exactly where to hide the chest, so it would be difficult to find it, but not impossible. It's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. Indecision is the key to flexibility, and that's why I waited so long to secret my cache. George Burns was 100 years old when someone asked him how his health was. He replied, my health is good, it's my age that's killing me. And like Eric Sloan, at the age of almost 80, I figured it was time to act. So I wrote a poem containing 9 clues that, if followed precisely, would lead to the end of my rainbow and the treasure. Colon. So he's setting the tone. He's already explained in that chapter why he created the poem, why he hid the chest. He explained all those details. That's all out of the way now. There's no reason for him to reiterate it in the poem. But one thing to remember here is that the context right now is the poem, because he's saying, so I wrote a poem containing 9 clues that, if followed precisely, would lead to the end of my rainbow and the treasure. Okay, so as I discussed in the previous video, the first stanza, it basically exists to reveal, as Forrest said, that there is a word that is key. There is a word that only a few searchers had tight focus on, and it is key. And actually, based on the research of K-Pro and Mike Calazars, actually, he said there's more than one word that's important. But he has said over and over that there is a word that is key. He didn't say there's a key word. He said there's a word that's key. So the whole purpose of the first stanza, in my opinion, and based on reading it and considering the context and the grammar, the whole purpose of that stanza is to reveal the word that is key and to tell us that we need to use it to reveal the secret where. And the word where only appears in 2 places. It appears in the first stanza and it appears in the second stanza. It's telling us to begin it where. So his secret where is going to reveal where there is. That's what he is saying here. In there. He went alone in there. So he's going to reveal where. And he has always stated many, many times that we must know the starting point. If you don't know the starting point, you don't have anything. He has also told us that the first clue is begin at where warm water salt. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. You can't look for the clues out of order. You have to have the correct starting point. So when he says begin it, and remember, right now our focus is the poem. So it is a pronoun that represents something that's already known or previously mentioned in a paragraph or in a sentence or in a clause, whatever. It's known. Okay. We're going to take the word that is key and we're going to begin that word and it's going to reveal the secret where. So again, this time we're reading the poem. Forget about maps, forget about geography. We're only focused on the poem, and our only goal is to discover the secret where. Because in order to get that, we're going to get the starting point. What we do is we're going to begin it where warm waters halt, and they halt at the T. And there's already a T in there, which is the first letter of the key word. The word treasures is bold, it's in there, okay? And it hints of riches new and old. So he's telling us that he can keep his secret where, but only when the conditions up here are met. So far, the only place we have in the poem is the word treasures here, but we're going to reveal it downward too, as instructed by the second stanza. Begin it where? Warm water salt. And take it in the canyon down. So we're going to take it down. Okay. Not far, but too far to walk. That's key too. Put in below the home of Brown. This box can be considered the home of Brown. We're below it. Okay, we're going to put in the line. So we're going to use the instructions that are in the stanzas below the home of Brown in order to put in the word treasures. And we don't need the starting T and we don't need the ending S. They're already in place, as you can see. The only letters that we need is R-E-A-S-U-R-E. And again, I'm not going to get into detail of these stanzas for a couple of reasons. One, the video will be too long. Two, that's work that you need to do. But trust me that these are not random selections. He's telling you which word and which letter to pick when you have more than one choice. Because as you can see here, we need an R. Well, we have an R here, and we have an R here. Why are we choosing this one? Is it just random? No, it's not random. And some of the details that tell you which one to pick are right here, not far, but too far to walk. So figure out what that means on your own and you'll understand what's going on here. Okay. And also keep in mind nouns. So again, the lines themselves are also telling you what to do and what words to pick. Now remember that right now all we're doing is finding out where to start. We're not trying to find places on the map. So this doesn't necessarily have anything to do with, locating places on the map right now. The context, the words there is only in two places, here and here. That's the only two places it's there. In there, okay? In the poem is there. And he's going to reveal the secret where, and he's telling you to put in below the home of Brown. So all the letters we need to be put in below the home of Brown. So let's read the poem now. From there, it's no place for the meek. From there, it is no place for the meek. Now remember, you're going to have to figure out the grammar. Now, what exactly does it mean? And consider these contractions. This is it is. Consider what kind of verb it is, what verb phrase it is, what does it mean, and what is he talking about? Where is the direct object? In this case, it's place. Place is the direct object. Okay, no is negating the word place. So he's saying it's not the place. It's no place for the meek. So we're taking from there, and then we're taking the end. And he's saying here, we need an A, but he don't want us to use this A. He's saying there's no paddle up your creek. So instead of pushing that one into the canyon, that's another thing. If this is below the home of Brown here, where the period is, then anything on this side is going to be below the canyon, okay? So we're essentially pushing things into the canyon. We're putting in, and we're leaving the word or the selected letter below the home of Brown. I mean, physically below this section of the poem at this point. Okay, so since we didn't take the A from paddle, we're taking it from loads. Why didn't we take heavy? Read the sentence again and think about nouns. Think about exactly what it's saying. Okay, from there, the end, just heavy loads and water high. Heavy loads and water high. So now we got REA. The next line says, if you've been wise and found the blaze. Well, we only have one S in this entire line. So obviously we need to pick wise. And look quickly down. Your quest. Your quest. Look quickly down. Your. But tarry, scant with Marvin gaze. Just take the chest and go in peace. Now I want to mention something about this too. If you want to look at the poem, people have noticed this before that you has as above and so below. You could kind of look at the poem that way, as above in the heavens and so below. Now think about that in context of the wheel, as above. What is the wheel talking about? What are the cards marking? They're marking things above, in the heavens, in the sky, based on what the astronomers discovered in the 1970s about the wheel. Once we get down to so, we're talking about our trip as it pertains below the home of Brown. You can shift these lines over and put the word chest within peace down here, and it'll reveal a little bit more information. And that information is going to reveal something about the eye. The chest is at the eye, and that's going to give you a clue as to what you're going to see when you get to the final location. Again, I'm not going to go into details because it would take too long, number one. Number two, quite honestly, I don't believe Jack knows the solve. I know that he knows the ending and he solved the ending, or he came out and on brute force. I'm assuming that he used other people's information to find the starting point. Okay. So he basically made it to the end, but doesn't know why he's there. And I'm keeping certain information still to myself because I don't believe he knows it. I'm certainly not going to educate him to that. So I do have it, and that's going to remain with me. I'm just going over the top level with you right now to take you directly to the chest. So now we've revealed the word treasures. Okay. So he had said, look quickly down in there. If you've been wise and found the blaze. If you look here, we have a double armed cross on its side. And it's made by the words the end. So we got the and the forming one cross, and end forming another cross. Also notice that there's a space between the N and the D. So you can interpret this if you read the words that are only overlapping the cross. Okay? One of the crosses. So you're going to read this column, this column, this column, this column, this column, and this column. Nothing else. All right? So we got try the wheel, treasure, end. Try the wheel, treasure, end. So he's telling us to try the wheel. The word try means to make an effort to accomplish something, okay? Take the effort to accomplish something. So he's telling you to try the wheel. He's not necessarily saying the wheel is where one winner salts. He's telling you to try something there, okay? But what he did do is he revealed the secret where. Where? Begin it essentially at the wheel. So we're going to try it at the wheel. Now, the next stanza is basically confirming. Now, if you look at the word we spelled TREASURE. Okay. Now remember that. So he's saying, so why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? When he's talking about trove here at this time, he's not talking about the treasure trove. This is a national treasure. Okay. We're standing at the wheel. The wheel is one of the treasures in our trove. Okay. And he's telling you that the answers are, I already know. I've done it, tired, and now I'm weak. So tired and weak are just giving you reassurance that try the wheel. What he's talking about, which wheel? Well, it's a medicine wheel. Okay. It's a medicine wheel. Where? In Wyoming. Why? Okay. Now you get down to the next stanza. So hear me all and listen good. That's a reference to a bighorn. Joseph Henry Sharp was a hint to that. Joseph Henry Sharp and also jumping off a bridge, where Forrest talked about doing that with his friends. Joseph Henry Sharp, when he was a teenager, jumped off the bridge, almost drowned, and as a result, he lived, but he lost his hearing. So he was deaf, and he was a deaf artist, and he did a lot of work with organizations that did things for deaf and mute people. Okay, that's important, but as a hint. But it's also a reference to hear me all and listen good. The very first hearing aid was a bighorn sheep, the horn itself. They hollowed it out, and they used it as a horn. You would hold it up to your ear, and it would make you hear. And when he's saying "hear me all," think of a megaphone or a deaf person repeating themselves. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? Because you're talking to a deaf person, but you'll say it again. All right. And he's saying your effort. Well, I just got done telling you that try means to apply an effort. He's telling you, okay, we've discovered this in the poem, but we still don't have the chest. But he's telling you that your effort's going to be worth the cold. We failed. Now think about, hide and seek. You're getting warmer, up, you're cold, you're far away. Okay. So right now we haven't come up with anything. Our efforts worth the cold. All we did is we reveal, try the wheel, treasures end. Now, when you read the word end, because of the gap here, read it like this: the END, the end, the END. Kind of like PB&J, peanut butter and jelly. The END. Think of E ampersand D. Okay. Now, the wheel, of course, is a circle. Tired. Weak is where the medicine come in, or a shaman, or a medicine man. You're tired and weak. So you're talking about a medicine wheel. If you are brave and in the wood, it's in the national forest and it's used by braves. That is who uses this wheel. So the title is the solution. The title to the goal at this point is the solution of where to begin. And where to begin, the full phrase would be the Bighorn Medicine Wheel in the Bighorn National Forest, Wyoming. So basically, we read the poem, and the context of the poem was the poem itself. He had gone alone in there, in the poem. Okay, so something is alone in the poem. The word treasure is alone in the poem. It's unique. It's also the longest word, and it's 9 characters. It's bold. It hints of riches new and old, and it's going to contain the secret where, if it's not only alone in there, but it's with this treasure bold. One of the other meanings for the word bold is steep or abrupt cliff. Okay, so we're displaying it bold here. So now we've got the word treasures in 2 places. And like I said in my previous video, the poem is what Sam calls a duality, meaning that it has 2 meanings. It has 2 phases. The first phase is figure out where to start. That's the phase we're doing now. We're not finding the treasure yet. We went over the poem and we're using the poem on itself. There's no ciphers here. There's no trickery, no anagrams. We're literally using the sliding trick that Forrest talks about in the book. In The Thrill of the Chase, page 23, it's the only place Forrest Fenn is alone. His full name is in there. It's also in the copyright and title page, but in the contents of the book, it is nowhere but page 23. And it says in the first paragraph, and where you see these I'm leaving out information between and after his name. But all of this is in the first paragraph. It says, it was there in there that my life really began. But for the first 10 years, I figured if it weren't for my name, I wouldn't have anything at all. So he's telling you that the only thing in his trove, the only treasure he had was his name. And then right after that, it says the word Forrest Fenn. Mrs. Ford uses that name, and she's addressing him. Forrest Fenn, don't you know anything? And then at the last sentence of that paragraph says, no matter what I lacked or lost, bad grades and all, they couldn't take away my name. So there he's sandwiched Forrest Fenn between my name. So, and he's telling you that he treasured his name. So that's just a key that we're looking for something alone. And then he always says, I prayed for D's in all my classes, but no one listened. And the wheel, the decairn in the wheel is significant. It's going to show us where warm waters halt. Soon, I'm going to get to that in a second. Now, on page 27, unfortunately, I was the only one in the class who knew that trick. The sliding, I mean. And even though that old rusty iron thing marked the tail of my breeches pretty good with a heavy brown color, it was worth it. Everyone who walked behind me on the next class, they knew what I had done. People were beginning to notice me. So he used the sliding trick to make people notice him. And it resulted in a heavy brown color. Well, we're applying the sliding trick beneath the Homer Brown. But you don't necessarily need that hit in the book to discover this. Just read the poem as it was written. He's telling you, take it in the canyon down. Not far, but too far away. Put in below the Homer Brown. So as I'm drawing to this box, we're putting things in so that they appear in the correct column below the Homer Brown. These two stanzas are revealing at this point, they're confirming which wheel he's talking about when he says try the wheel. Okay, so now let's go to the wheel. Pretend that we parked in the parking lot. We're at the wheel now. We're going to go try the wheel. We're boots on the ground. You can obviously do a lot of this research from at home, but we're at the wheel. We're going to try the wheel. We're going to make an effort or an attempt at using the wheel as described on site in the kiosks. In other words, all this information is public. It's a boots on the ground hunt at this point, and you're beyond the starting clue. We're at the wheel. We physically got there, which is why the little Indian girl and the boy could not make it past the first few clues because they can't get to the wheel. It's as simple as that. If you would have said a man or somebody that was old enough to drive or travel on their own, they could have got beyond those clues. So that aside, here we're at the wheel. There's an entire huge kiosk in the parking lot. There's a little ranger station there, and there's probably, I don't know, 10 or more kiosks. All of them describe different aspects of the wheel. When you park in the parking lot and start walking up towards the wheel, the first thing you're going to pass is the Five Springs Overlook. And this sign kind of describes what you're going to see at the Five Springs Overlook. If there's benches up there, if you sit in those benches, you can see the entire Bighorn Canyon, or basin, I should say. You can probably see Cody on a clear day. You can see completely across there for over 100 miles. You can see everything. Okay, it's a marvel gaze at that point. And incidentally, tarry scant means a short sojourn or a short stay. So at an overlook with benches, that's what you would do. You would sit there, tarry scant with marvel gaze, right? Okay, so you're going to see a lot of stuff there, a lot of kiosks. Let's take a look at something else. I've showed this before, but here's one of the benches that's up there at that overlook. This is also described in the literature for the wheel. These guys here, Charles Brady, Francis Brown, and down here it says Arapaho. It says that this is dedicated to Charles Brady, Arapaho, dedicated to Francis Brown, Arapaho. And over here it says Hammond Wise. Yeah, his last name is Wise. Okay, these three men are part of the coalition. This guy is the father of the coalition, the Honorable Francis Brown. And what they did was there was a bunch of lumberjacks in Powell and various places in Wyoming that wanted to come and harvest more wood out of these trees. And the government wanted to basically set up a big parking lot here, including an observation deck and probably a hotel, who knows, where you can observe the wheel from the observation deck. In other words, they wanted to turn this into a big tourist location. They wanted to pave the road so you could drive all the way up to it. They wanted to do all of that stuff. And a coalition formed, and the leader of that coalition is Francis Brown. And all this is documented, by the way. So Francis Brown started a coalition, and they fought the government. And they, without getting into all the details, they preserved this spiritual place considered the origin of many tribes. They consider this a very sacred place. There's 28 spokes, 28 tribes. All right. These were the main representatives here that formed a coalition that beat the government. They expanded the protected area and they prevented the lumberjacks and any development happening up in there. And this occurred in the late 90s and early 2000s. And I believe Forrest was a part of it. The two main tribes in this, or three, were the Arapaho, the Shoshone, and the Crow. And of course, you got pictures of Forrest Fenn with Joe Medicine Crow and Al Simpson, who was part of the government, meeting in Cody, and they were friends. Okay. They're all aware of the wheel. Trust me, right? So I have no doubt that Forrest Fenn was friends with them. And Francis Brown, the coalition was actually formed in Taos, New Mexico. Francis Brown was born in Arapaho, Wyoming, but he lived in the Pueblo in Taos for a while, and he worked with them. And so did his son or his nephew. I forgot what his name is. He's also an Arapaho. And Charles Brady, okay, and Hammond Wise. So these three guys had connections to New Mexico. I think Forrest knew one or more, most likely. And who knows? Maybe Forrest contributed to this. Because you got to remember that historically, Forrest's main gig was collecting Indian stuff. That's his main thing. I mean, he discovered the San Lazaro. He discovered his first arrowhead, and he's got rooms and vaults filled with Indian stuff. He went and bought the entire state of Joseph Henry Sharp, who basically built a career on making portraits of Indians. Okay. And his cabin that Forrest also purchased and had moved to Cody was basically downstream of where we are. It was at the confluence of the Little and Bighorn rivers, right where Custer's battle took place. Okay. So it's literally just north of where we are here. So in any case, that's what we see. Now, if you were to stand up at this bench and walk about 2 feet and look quickly down, you'd be looking at the Five Springs Basin. Now, the basin, the word Five Springs, each spring would represent water, right? So we have waters, plural. So just remember that. So we got 5 springs. And also remember that we're standing on the Medicine Mountain watershed or the Bighorn watershed, okay? It provides fresh water throughout the country. So does the Wind River watershed and all the other mountain ranges. Okay. But also, the Indians considered any water below the ground as warm water until it comes up from below the ground, and then it's affected by the temperature. And the water temperature below the ground is always warm, relatively speaking. And throughout the Rockies, I think in New Mexico, it's roughly 65 degrees. And up in Alaska, in the Rockies, it might be 37 degrees when you're below the ground. It all depends on how far north you are and how far below the ground the water is. The further down below the ground, and also it has to do with how close you are to thermals. Okay. Volcanic activity obviously is going to warm it up even more. The stuff in Yellowstone is not warm, it's boiling for the most part. I mean, it's, below the ground, it's 400 degrees or higher. I mean, if you slip into most of those areas in Yellowstone, you're dead. You're going to cook alive. So that's not what I would consider warm water. I would consider maybe, this area coming out of these springs or Thermopolis, probably warm water. Another thing that I want to mention about Five Springs Canyon, where we are, is Five Springs Canyon, believe it or not, exists also in New Mexico, and it happens to be south of San Rey. All right, so let's move on. Here's another thing that you're going to notice on the kiosks, and this is Dr. Eddie's diagram. He was an astronomer. He had a PhD. That's why it says Dr. Eddie. So he knows what he's talking about. In 1974, he went to the wheel and he discovered all of the alignment of these cairns, A, B, C, D, and E. What do they point to? And F is what's known as a backseat. It's just where you would sit. If you also notice that F, all of these are shaped like horseshoes, but F is the only one that's inside the wheel. All the rest of them are out or touching the wheel. So each one of those is labeled A, B, C, D, E. O is the center. Okay. And it's telling you here what you're going to observe when you're standing at that location. And it also tells you in the kiosk other things. Like, for example, Aldebaran is actually the fiery eye of Taurus. It's the brightest star in the constellation Taurus, the bull, bravery, bull. You know, you can look at the Taurus astrology sign is bravery, right? Strength, bravery. If you look at B is Rigel. Rigel is the brightest star in Orion, and it's in his foot or his toe. So that Rigel represents Orion's toe. And Orion is holding a bow and he's fighting towards the bull. That's if you get into the mythology of things, that's the story behind that. So Rigel is up there, he's fighting towards the bull. Sirius is the brightest star in Canis Major. And Canis Major is known as the great dog, the big dog. It's mythology, it's one of Orion's two hunting dogs. Okay. And while Orion is busy hunting Taurus or fighting off Taurus, one of the dogs, Sirius, is chasing a hare into a river. The other dog is up chasing a unicorn, but that is not represented here on this thing. Only Rigel and Sirius, only Orion and the one hunting dog are represented here. And then we have C. C is where you would stand to observe, and you look across the center of the wheel. Here, you would stand here, look across the center, and you're going to observe the sunset. Okay. And then D, if you're sitting on F and D, you're gonna observe Fomalhaut. Fomalhaut is the brightest star in the southern fish. It's known as. It's the mouth of the southern fish, and it sits right below. Actually, let me look it up. Okay, here we go. Aldebaran, the follower, the fiery eye of the constellation of Taurus, the bull, stands for bravery and brave. In other words, not for the meek. Rigel is the foot or the toe, the constellation Orion. He's known as the hunter, the king of the wood. Orion is synonymous with the end in mythology. Sirius is the glowing or scorching dog star. It's part of the constellation Canis Major, the greater dog of Orion. And that dog is basically paddling up the Milky Way's dark river, which is known as Erandius, the celestial river in the southwest part of the sky. And as I said, Fomalhaut is the mouth of the fish. The constellation Pisces Austrinius. Pisces Austrinius, the southern fish. He's swallowing water at Fomalhaut. Directly above him is Aquarius constellation. Aquarius is known as the water bearer. So if you were using your imagination and you were sitting at the wheel, it would look like Aquarius is spilling water into the southern fish's mouth while Orion's up there battling a bull and his dog is chasing a hare down the river. Crazy stuff, mythology, I don't know. But anyway, that's what we would see when we get up to the wheel. So let's actually go up to the wheel and put it to action. Okay, so here we are up at the wheel now. And remember, I already showed you all the documentation. We're oriented north. So this is north up here. This is south or down. This is east. This is west. All right. And I already told you what the currents are labeled: A, B, C, D, E, F, O. Okay. So we're standing here at the wheel. Beginning where? Now we've already read try the wheel. So we're standing here at the wheel. Anybody know where warm water salt and take it in the canyon down. So let's assume that we're at the wheel. We're standing here where the spin is. And incidentally, they said this is Medicine Mountain Peak here. All right. This is actually taller than this. This whole area is what I'm considering the home of Brown. But specifically, there's a bench over here, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we're at the wheel. Let's read the poem now. So we're taking the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk, but in below the home of Brown. We did all that. We're here. So we'll try the wheel. So he says, from there being the wheel again. So everything at this point, the context is no longer the poem, it's the wheel. From there, it's no place for the meek. Bam. Aldebaran. Basically, there's one more thing I want to show you really quick. When we enter the wheel, this is the first thing we're going to see. Okay, that's looking south. So we're going to see walk left. You have to walk left. And they explain why. And the reason why is that's clockwise left. The Indians believe that to respect the spirits, when you enter this wheel, you always walk sunwise or clockwise. If you go to the right, you're gonna be upsetting the spirits. So that's why we're going left. And that's why the order of the clues I'm going to show you didn't need to be stated, because they're appearing in the order that we're going to be walking around this wheel. And we're going to be observing the cairns. His treasures bold at this point, of course, as he's gone alone in there, are going to be all the offerings that the people have hung all around there. Those are the treasures. Okay. Every year, I think the Indians take all that stuff off. Those are all prayer offerings. Now, back to the Google Earth. So we entered here. The sign said keep left. So we walked left. We got to the first cairn. This is labeled Aldebaran. If you were sitting at the wheel observing, directly above this would be the brightest star in Taurus. Okay. Then we get to, so that's from there. And again, we're walking around. It is no place for the meek. The end is ever drawn nigh, Rigel. Okay. Rigel is the foot of Orion. He's there fighting Taurus. This whole area is no place for the meek. The end is drawing nigh. Now, again, these clues, you can't just, they have multiple layered definitions. So when he says the end is drawing nigh, he's describing the wheel itself too. And the END, this is END. So we're getting closer to the end. But also, there's a battle taking place in the sky on this half of the wheel. Okay. There's no place for the meek, the end's ever drawing nigh. And he's got a semicolon in there because both of those are telling you that these two sentences, the one before the semicolon and the one after, are strongly related. And they're related here because they're all describing locations. And there's also overlap. They have dual meaning. So the end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek. Okay. So now we're at Sirius, the great dog who's going up the creek chasing the rabbit. We're not going to be going up that creek. But remember, there's another meaning to this. And I'll get to that in a minute. The only thing we're going to have is heavy loads and water high. Now, if we observe from F and look towards D, basically it's going to create this line. And you'll notice that goes right through the D cairn from the center. It comes down. If you were sitting at the F, it would be up here a little bit more, but it doesn't really matter. This is Five Springs Basin. That bench that I was showing you earlier is right here. So we're below the home of Brown. When you look down, is the base you're looking to. Here's the headwaters for the Five Springs Creek. So that line that's pointing to Fomahat is pointing below Aquarius. Now, if you look at this here, you'll notice that where you sit is higher than the edge of the wheel. So the mountain here would actually clip the horizon. It would look like that the water is being spilled from Aquarius from the sky and falling into the basin down here. Remember, Forrest said to use your imagination. So we've got that. And the other thing we looked at, we're going to get to in a second. So now he says, there'll be no paddle up the creek, just heavy loads and water high. So the heavy loads and water high. Again, the poem's going to have multiple meanings, but water's high is the fact that we're looking up into celestial sea. But he's telling you that there's no paddling up there. So what he's telling you to do is take these cairns and look quickly down from the star in the sky and map them to the ground. So the falling rocks is what he's talking about, heavy loads. Water high, as you'll see, is going to be going to the waterfalls that we're going at. All right. Then he says, if you've been wise and found the blaze. Okay. So we've walked around. We're now standing here. We're standing at the E, Karen, here. The blaze at that point, and if you look at this red line here, is the sunrise. If you stand here and look this way, you'll see the sunrise. And if you look at, now he says, if you've been wise and found the blaze, we have been wise. We went clockwise. We kept left. We found the blaze. When he says look quickly down, he's telling you to look down from the perspective of the blaze, the sun, at this point. So here's that red line that it's drawing, okay? We're looking down. That line goes over, and it crosses right over where the treasure chest is, down here, crosses over the falls. That's water high. And if we keep going down, it ends right here at the road that takes us up to the campground. And if you keep extending it, it goes right to here, which is all this down here is known as Rainbow Canyon. See it? It's a canyon. You can see the depth there. That's Rainbow Canyon because of the colors it has. That's labeled on a map. Here's the Five Springs Creek. There's that line taking you right to it. So remember, Forrest said it'll lead to the end of my rainbow and the treasure. Okay. So the end of his rainbow and the treasure is here, in my opinion. So there's that line. Now let me show you something. If you were here at 5 o'clock in the morning, this is roughly what it would look like. Here's that line coming down. It goes down. And let me show you one more screen. That is the same thing. This is the same thing, same screen. And on 6/19/2020 at 5:27 a.m. local time from Lovell, this is what the summer sunrise would look like. Okay. Obviously, I'm Google Earth. Obviously, I'm set back. But this line, remember, is coming off the E. This is your blaze. Sorry, Jacket. There's more than one blaze, first of all. There's a blaze in the poem. There's the sun. And then I'm going to get to the final one in a minute. But you're not going to be moving the sun. So when he says look quickly down, he's telling you to sight as if you were the sun. Look down, okay? But there is the alignment, okay? Now, if you were standing up here at the chest, which is, I think, right down here, and you looked at the top of this canyon down in here where the waterfalls is, the sun would appear right above the blaze. And if you look down the strike that's through the canyon, there's another blaze, okay, right where the treasure is. That may be the one that Jack's talking about. I don't know. But in any case, that would be the closest one to the chest. But you're not removing this blaze. You're not going to do it. And it's also not a tree, I don't believe. So 1 second. Now let me go back to Google Earth. So again, here we are back in Google Earth. And this is that line that I just showed you. So if we were standing here and we put our back to the sun, obviously we can't walk down here. All right. When you're looking down here, it's not far to where the treasure is, but it's too far to walk. And actually, it's 2.4 miles as the crow flies to the treasure chest. 2.42, I think. Almost exactly. But it's too far to walk. You're going to have to drive. And the other part, when you read the poem again now, so we continue on. If you want to find the blaze, look quickly down, your quest to cease. And he's reminding you now again, he says, but tarry scant with marble gaze. Remember what I was talking about here now. Here's the tarry scant line. If you were sitting there, you're looking at the same line that I'm talking about where the warm water salt. But tarry scant with marble gaze, take the chest, and go in peace. Now, there's two ways that you can go. One of them is walking distance. This is the old road. This is the road that it's on. In Forrest Day, this is the road that you had to take. I can actually highlight that here. It's 3 miles from the wheel if you followed it down to here. Then, if we took the old road, it's another 10.10 miles. This road is very dangerous. That is the only road that existed when Forrest was a kid, actually up until 1960. So it's 10 miles to here, from here to here. But the better way to go, in my opinion, would be to follow this road, which is only 9.35 miles. So you go down the current road, and then once you're down here, you make the turn off and you go up. And that would be an additional 2.15 miles, and that would take you to the same place. Then you would go into the camping ground, and then you would hike the quarter-mile trail right here. Okay, so he's tarry scant with marble gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. So he's telling us that we're going to have to go down there and get it. He doesn't really need to give us any more information, because the line, when he said take it in the canyon down, and then when he said to look quickly down, he's telling you to sight down this line. And it goes right over where the chest is, and it ends up where he wants you to come in. So we want to put in down here. All right. And the other thing he says when he's up there, next, let's finish out the rest of the poem. So why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? Again, we're standing up here right now, and we're going to have to leave our trove. We came up cold again. Here we are, no treasure. Okay. Why is it I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? The answer I already know. I've done it tired, and now I'm weak. Remember when I talked about multiple meanings? Okay. So tired and weak was a reference to the wheel. What is Five Springs Campground? What is a campground used for? When you're tired and weak, you're going to go to campground for a short sojourn, a tarry scant with marble gaze. And I'll get to that when I show the other video. So again, he's telling you, I'm tired and weak. So hear me all, listen good. He's telling you that to go back now and look at everything you've learned so far. And he's telling you the effort is worth the cold. If you are brave and in the wood, I'll give you title to the goal. This time he's really going to take us to the chest. So now we drive down. Okay, we drive down that way. Let me get rid of this line because we don't need it no more. And these are all kind of messing up my thing. So let's go down to our road. We're here. I could probably turn off the road that we used to get there. We're standing here now. Hold on one sec. Let me show you. So now you can start again from there. You don't need to go back to the beginning of the poem, because we put in here. We are below the Homer Brown. Okay. We are below it. We're south of it and we're below it in elevation. This is 10,000 feet. This is 9,600 something feet. And this down here is 5,700 feet. So we're below the Homer Ground. We put in. Now this time, let me show you. We're going to see this sign right in front of us. You can read it first. Basically, it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up our creek. The only creek here, or the only creek that's close and south and below, all three of those, the Homer Brown and the wheel, is going to be Five Springs Creek. He's already showed us that. He's already showed us the headwaters of it at the Five Springs. He took us in at the put-in point of how to get there. So from there, now we're standing here. We're below the Homer Brown. From there, it's no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. We're going upstream. There's no paddling up our creek. And this time we have a physical creek. In case you don't think it's dangerous enough, here's another sign that's there. Severe road damage, steep grade, hairpin turns, soft shoulders and falling rocks. Watch for oncoming traffic. Trailers or vehicles over 30 feet are not recommended. Now remember, up until the 1960s, this was the only way to even get to the wheel. This trail, or this road, is actually following the ancient trail that the Indians used before there were roads to get up to the wheel. they would follow this road here. Of course, they would go beyond, and there was no campground there. They would go all the way up. They would go all the way around because they have to enter the wheel from the east and they have to walk sunwise. Again, remember, you can't enter it from the west or the south. You would be upsetting the gods. You can only enter the wheel in one spot, and you're supposed to walk clockwise. Okay, I just want to point out one thing quick, side note. And I had mentioned this before in other videos, but you remember the double cross, the cross of Lorraine, the first blaze that I revealed in the poem using the words the end? Look on the side of the treasure chest here. This is from Too Far to Walk. And he's got this in other places, this double arm cross. That's what we formed in the poem. I just want to show that. Now let me go back to Google Earth. So we follow that road up. Notice all these hairpin turns, and you know, I mean this. I mean, let me. This will just give you an idea when I tilt Google Earth down how you're going. You're ascending the mountain, and this is the current way. You would just keep going up 14A. This is the historical one. This, like I said, until the 1960s, this was the only way to get up here. Unless you went down by Great Bull, there's another way to get up, but that doesn't take you to the wheel. So this is the only way to get to the wheel at that time. They kept the road there, but now it's really only used. It's only paved right to here. So when you get up here, it's only really used to get you off into the campgrounds up here. Again, look how that thing is taking you in to a tight canyon there. Okay, and then of course it keeps going higher, but there's no way to get down in the area I'm showing you without killing yourself. You have to come in this way. There's only one way to go in. Let me orient us north again. So we don't have to go up beyond where this red line is. We go into the camp. We're not going all the way up to the wheel this time. So we arrive at the camp, and then we're going to go up because we're going to keep following the line. We're going to go as far as we can. We're going to park here, and here's the trailhead that we need to take. This is where we leave the roads. Okay. Now we're going off onto a trail. Now let me show you something. When you're standing at that trailhead, this is the first thing you're going to see right in your face. Five Springs Trail. Okay. Not maintained beyond this point. Travel at your own risk. So this is the Five Springs Falls, water high. Five Springs Falls Trail. Not maintained beyond this point. Travel at your own risk. Not for the meat. Caution, falling rocks. Water falling rocks are heavy loads. So we got heavy loads and water high. Again, this is the path that goes back, but it's going to take us around the corner here and back in. So back to Google Earth. So we're going to go in that trail. We're going to hike that trail up, 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 up. And when we get right here, and I want you to see that again where you are there. When you're sitting up there, you got a really good view if you look down this way of the entire Bighorn Basin. I mean, it's really beautiful. So it's another place to tarry scant with marvel gaze. Now, I don't know if this one is still there, but one thing you will see there is this. Hang on. This is the physical end of the trail that's maintained right here. This is just the trail. Come back here. This is coming out. Right here, we're facing west. There's a bench that looks out for a view. I just came out of the woods. This is walking away from the falls, heading back to the car. The bench on the left. So let me go back now to Google Earth one more time. We go past that bench. We're going to come back in here. We're going to go through the woods, okay? And we're going to make it to the lower waterfalls where the trail stops. And I'm going to show you a cool video that I got that'll show you what it really looks like going up in here. But basically, let me show you a few pictures. It basically ends here, the trail. Okay, this is what you're going to see. This is the lower falls. I'm going to say that this is probably, I don't know, 20 feet tall. And back here, you can't see it because of this tree. This is where the larger falls are, right? So you can actually go up. If you look on the left here, there's no trail, but you can go up and come down and actually go back and around to the left across from the waterfalls. Now the sunrise I showed you would be up over here at this point, okay, if you have everything oriented correctly. And just to show you that it's not hard to get up here, although most people don't go up here because the trail ends, there's no trail up here. Now, if I were a sheep eater Indian seeking shelter, it's a beautiful spot up in there. It's like a cirque. There's no way out. If you had enemies and your enemies are coming for you, the only way they can get to you is coming through here, through this tight canyon. And you don't even have to go in the water, I don't think. Doesn't look like it. And you'll see that in the other video I'm going to show you. But basically, you come up through here, go to the left. And let me show you a second picture of this. As you can see, there's a guy up there, sitting up there. He looks like he's old. He's got gray hair, certainly. So he managed to go up there, and he's taking a picture down of those 20-foot falls. Now, if you look in here, he could go down and around. There's a way up here along this side, and you can walk through there and go to the left. I'll show you that much more clear in a minute. But I just wanted to see that's what I'm talking about. You would have to, if a searcher came here and stopped, okay, or if they went up where this guy is or up to here, but they just didn't go back, they were within 200 feet of the chest. If you stand down here at the basin and don't even try to ascend these rocks, you're probably close to 500 feet away if you only went to the end of the trail. And that's about as far as most people go. So I just wanted to get one more view of this and show you a topographical map with gradients on it. This is the road where we ended. This is where we came up to the second camp, which is past the first loop on the second loop. We took the trail in. We went to here. That's where that bench was. And we went to the lower falls, okay? And I'm saying you can't see it's in the shadow. You got to go up the falls, and you go around, because there's rocks that come out here. You go around it, and I believe that it was in the nook on this side. And the sun, or that line that I drew, comes right down here, that E line, or the sunshine itself, come right down. So if you were standing here looking up, you probably wouldn't see it at 5:30. It's too early. It would have to be the sun would have to be higher in the sky. So it would probably, because the sun's going to rise here, but it's going to come around like this. Okay. So basically, the sun would probably be over the waterfall by the time you could see it. But this is over here. There was a rock slide or something. You kind of see it in the video. That looks like it was recent, and it may have disturbed things. So, what I want to show you next is a video. And those of you that want to solve, I pretty much showed it to you. There's really no point to watch it beyond this point, but I'm going to go over some more things. And there's a really nice video that shows you. And the guy who made the video was kind enough to let me use it. I asked him for permission, and I told him that I'm going to give him credit. And I'm going to put his name up in the top left of the video, probably up here, so it's out of the way. And I'm also going to provide a link below that takes you to his video. He's a nice guy. And basically what he did is he went over here and he flew a drone into here, and he spun the drone around, taking real good photography in there. And I kind of want to point things out in that video. So I downloaded that video, again, with his permission, and I'm going to go through it, but I'm going to pause it and show you certain key things. But it's amazing. So anyway, for those of you that don't want to watch the rest of this, shame on you. Please click like and please subscribe. But I believe that this is the solution. There's a lot of things that I didn't go into that are details that dictate why I pick certain things, how I pick certain things, how I know what you're going to see. That's the physical blaze. That's boots on the ground. And the other thing I want to point out is if you look at the rhyme scheme in the poem, it's not A B A B. That's not the way it works. And also, if you look really close, lines 2 and 4 also rhyme with lines 22 and 24. So in other words, and with my treasures bold, and hint of riches new and old, rhymes with your effort will be worth the cold. I give you title to the gold. The other thing that you'll notice is From there, it's no place for the meek, which is 9-9. There'll be no paddle up your creek, 11. Rhymes with lines 18 and 20. And leave my trough for all to seek. I've done a tired down week. That is another hint that's in there. That's with the rhyme scheme. And I believe he broke that rhyme scheme. It would have been AB, AB if he didn't do this. But he breaks the rhyme scheme. And when a word in a poem below rhymes with one on top, you're supposed to label that. So, for example, 2 and 4 rhyme with 22 and 24. So line 22 and 24 are B, just like 2 and 4. And line 9, 11, 18, and 20 are E. And I wanted to point that out. The other thing I want to point out is warm waters halts in a watershed. Okay. Another thing I want to point out is the cairns are all horseshoe shaped. Third thing I want to point out is that George Friesen, who's an archaeologist that worked with Forrest on the Clovis Points, he worked with other teams on Clovis Points in the Bighorns or near the Bighorns, but he also worked on other things. And he identified or carbon dated ceramics that were recovered from the interior of the medicine wheel, and they were all identified as Crow and Shoshone in origin. That doesn't mean that they made the wheel, but what it does prove is that for hundreds of years they could prove that the Shoshone and the Crow were there. The Crow considered that their home. The other 28 tribes will consider it their spiritual origin. And a home is an origin. Oh, yeah, no, I think I went over this too already. Reassure. The words that we spell. He says, so listen all and hear me good. Reassure, Reasure, are the letters that we spelled for treasure. Those are the only lines we needed to use the sliding trick on. So if you sound that out, it sounds like reassure. And the only difference in spelling is we're missing an S. Reassure is reassure. So you would have to have as in there, right? Reassure. That word is synonymous with self-confidence. And the meaning of reassure is to give confidence. So the whole section of the poems that spelled out reassure and the last two stanzas are giving us confidence that we are in the right place. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go over that video. Okay, so here's that video that guy recorded. And if we look over here, this is where that bench is underneath this tree here. You can't see it, it's kind of out of the frame. But here's the trail coming out of the woods. So we're not really going to be able to see below the trail because it's in the trees. This is the lush green forest. And we are beneath a canopy of stars because up in there where the wheel is, what is the wheel representing? It's representing the stars. Why do you think he has stars on Once Upon a While? Why do you think Once Upon a While is a title based around telling stories? That's besides the Vision Quest stuff. That's what they use the wheel for. So here we are going in. You'll see the stream down here. This here is the larger falls. Down here is the smaller falls. This is that area where you'd have to walk in. You'd have to walk in. And I want you to take note of these trees that are on the left. They're above the smaller falls and they're on the left. I believe that's where the treasure chest was, on the left around these falls. Okay. And just keep in mind again, this is the larger falls. Just you can look at what's here and you'll see because it's kind of a little disorienting when the plane is flying with the camera. So here we're going in again. We could see this flat area I'm talking about. This is relatively flat. This ascends up a little bit, and there's a nook inside here. This nook is actually quite large. It's kind of similar to the nook where Mommy Joe was found. And again, I believe this is a beautiful place for sheep feeders to go. Up here, there's another fall. And he shows it with his camera, but it's impossible to get up that one. This is about as far as you're going to go. You could probably walk up here, although I don't believe he had to. I think it's down here in a nook where the shade is inside here, in back. You can't see around there yet, but in back of that wall. That's what I believe the chest was. And again, you can't see the falls at the bottom. You're looking at the Five Springs Creek as it goes from that 20-foot waterfall down here at a frame, and then there's a flat area, and then we get to the big falls that you can't ascend. This is a special spot. This is almost what he describes in the trip with him and Donnie, because they went where only the water could fit through, and they couldn't go that way. It was the largest area behind them, so they had to turn around and leave and go back to home. They could not, go past here because this point up here is a very tight canyon, and it's impossible to get up there. And again, these are all the fallen rocks. You can see evidence of that down here if you look at these rocks, and you'll see in the left side of the wall when he comes around. You might not be able to see it in this video, but I do show it in my other video. There's a gash that comes down the side of this wall, and it goes in this direction, and part of the gash is gone. But above that gash, if you were standing right where the camera is now, is where the sunrise would appear. But again, by the time you get down here, in order to even see the sun, because you're so close to this cliff, it would probably have to be like an hour or two later. And by that time, it would be over the waterfalls here. So there he pans down. And again, remember, see where this goes back in here, where these rocks are, and down here, where these trees are? That's the area I'm talking about. And again, look at these rocks again here. There's falling rocks all over the place in here. I mean, look at these jagged walls, and you can see the way it's simply, that these rock falls were probably pretty popular here. So he stops here for a moment and see. I don't think you have to, but I think you can walk up to here. That's about as far as you're going to go, though. But you don't have to, because the chest was down here. This is the falls that you can't see. It's up even higher, and there's no way you're going to get up here. He got up there, of course, with the drone. And this goes all the way back, continuing the creek. It goes all the way up back up to Five Springs Basin. But he's going to pan down here, and he's going to show you the big falls, the one I was telling you that you can't ascend. Remember where Forrest was talking about only the water can get through? There's no way in hell you're getting up here. I mean, unless you have a helicopter lower you down, there's no way. But here's that large falls, and that's what I mean. You can see the rocks down here. Remember, I showed you them from when the drone was flying in. This is the falls that you can't ascend. But look under these trees. I don't remember whether he curves the camera more, but that's what I'm talking about. There's the canyon wall over here. There's trees over here. And I believe that that's where the treasure was, under those trees, directly across from the falls. There's a better shot of it right there. So here's that big falls that you can't ascend. And again, you see the way all this is jagged coming downward, these slots? That's the same way it is behind the camera. And in my other video, I show that view from behind the camera. And you can see that a huge chunk, basically there's a jagged chunk coming down that removed a lot of the stuff and it all fell right behind me. But in this shaded area is what I'm talking about. In there's rocks, there's more trees coming down here. That is what I'm talking about. That is where I believe the treasure was. Okay. There is no trail in here at all or out here. Do a lot of people come up here? I don't think so. I know some people do because there's comments that they came up here and took a shower under here, which reminds me of Forrest sitting in the shower with a skylight above him. To me, that's another hint that the blaze is above the falls. Okay. People can shower in here. Maybe Forrest did. Who knows? Probably cold as hell, but we do know some people do. But how many of them are just going to walk up here and do that? Maybe they'll sit down, but they don't know what to look for. And it probably was covered with debris, and they didn't know that there's a blaze on the, also a blaze on the, in here on the canyon wall that you would look down from, and that's where the chest is. So no, I don't believe they would find it. But Forrest did say at one time that he was amazed nobody found it yet. So again, we're kind of, this goes back towards those lower falls. I think he might pan a little bit more. Maybe not. I don't know. Yeah, here's another one coming back. Except this time he's looking east. And that's the large fall again. As I said, there's no way you're getting up there. But the sun, oh, this is probably a better, this is what I'm talking about. Over here is where that blaze is I'm talking about. Hopefully it comes in frame. But these are rocks that fell when they have rock slides here all the time. Here's another example of a rock slide. And there's those trees again that I'm talking about. The chest, if I drew an arrow facing that way, diagonally, that's where the chest is, back in there against the canyon wall on the base, not buried, but covered with debris. And again, here's that rock fall. Unfortunately, you can't see it here, but it kind of looks like a blaze in the wall up there too. And it comes down this way, and then it goes behind the trees. Well, part of that's missing because of this rock fall, rock slide. But I believe, like I said, if you were to go in these trees, there's a carving on the wall, and there's a nook in the wall. And like I said, I believe that this is showing the sheep eaters would come in here. It's because this is only roughly 7,000 to 7,200 feet, somewhere between there. There's access to water. You know, you got the protection, only one way in. You've got the coverage of the trees. You got access to food. There's no grizzly bears here. There could be brown bears, which could be snakes, but nothing more harmful than what you could find when you're out on a camping trip, which is the way I believe he wanted it. Now, is this a place he could have crawled up in and died? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I would believe something like this than in the middle of Yellowstone, anywhere. And Forrest had also said that he likes to go off the trail, but Yellowstone is not a place to do that. Even he said that. Now, if the chest was here, there would be no legal question. If this is public land, in fact, this is not even protected from the Wheel Coalition, and technically, it's right on the border of the National Forest and public land. It's right on the border. But even in the National Forest, it's still public land as long as you weren't digging and taking up something that's a native artifact from the area. Now, Yellowstone is um, a place where, even in Forrest's words, there's a legal question. He said so himself. He said if you found it in Yellowstone, you're required to bring it to the superintendent. That, in and itself, is a legal question. He said, "What if there isn't one?" And he wasn't talking about breaking the law. I don't think he sent people in there. So I don't necessarily believe that stuff that Jack he ain't telling, because it was in Yellowstone and he doesn't want to get in trouble for taking it without giving it to the supervisor. Well, I can also make the same claim here. What if my ending is wrong and it was in the wheel? Now that medicine wheel is not Indian land, but technically you are not supposed to go in that wheel. unless you have permission from the National Forest. Would they arrest you? I don't think so. Would they arrest you for taking it? I don't think so. It's not a native thing to the area. But I can see that if it was there, Jack would be embarrassed, but who would want to essentially go into a sacred area owned by the Indians and take something? Now look at it from Forrest's perspective. If Forrest really wants you to get a feeling of what he did throughout his life collecting Indian things and then being accused of grave robbing, well, what better way than to take his treasure and put it in a place that Indians go to and then challenge you to go get it? So now you got an ethical decision. Am I going to go in that wheel and take it? Look at it this way. Suppose, Forrest wouldn't get in trouble for it. If he got caught, all he had to do was say, "This is my gift back to the Indians. I left it there as a prayer offering because I believed that when I went and seek spiritual help from the wheel when I had cancer, that because that's what the Indians told me to do. Forrest, you've been following these Indians around your whole life. Why don't you go and do what they would do when they got sick?" So he went back with an offering and left it there. So he ain't gonna get in trouble for that. But I guarantee you that if you went there and started removing offerings from that rope or anywhere inside, you would get in trouble, even though those offerings are not native to the land. So again, I can come up with that same argument. Now, as to the research that Candy did, that's a joke. Yeah, the Freedom of Information Act. Oh, well, let me put it to you this way. Having worked for a family of detectives, arson detective in our case, but my father was involved in a lot of search and rescues throughout his whole life. So were many members of my family. I can assure you that when things happen in the national park or even in a city-owned park, they contact those involved in it. Now, and if it can be proven that you are the cause of the accident, they could charge you and make you pay for any and all deaths, rescue attempts, any expenses they had, fire expenses. They can also cause you to lose your insurance. If you had a house fire or a building fire or a business fire, my father would have to go in there and see if it was Jewish lightning. If he determined that the fire was caused due to your negligence, insurance doesn't have to pay for it. In any case, of course, you're going to find information back and forth from Yellowstone National Park and Forest. Why? Because people were busted in there for trying to find Forrest Fenn's treasure chest. But multiple times, like probably 8 times I could read, but not. Okay, we recently had the guys that took the rope, a 200-foot rope, to try to get down the cliff at the main falls. There's one. And then there's another guy that was trying to ford a river, and he ended up where he couldn't get back from the river. Not once, but twice they had to rescue that guy. But countless people were arrested. And every time anything happens like that on federal property, especially when the person said, "I was there because of Forrest Fenn's treasure," they are obligated to investigate it. Because if they can prove that Forrest had that chest there, and believe me, the FBI does not like Forrest. If they knew that this treasure had anything whatsoever to do with Yellowstone, they'd be up all over Forrest Fenn. And when he died, they'd still be all over the family. And our government's got the money to fight him until he'd be bankrupt for us. He couldn't afford to fight the government. So basically, they didn't find anything wrong. They don't know anything about that. Now, could Jack still have went in there and stole it? Yeah, you could. And yeah, so K-Pro is perfectly right. If he did that, and if the chest was there, but I'm trying to tell you that I don't believe the chest was there. Forrest, if it was there, it would have to be right near a trail, because he said, "Don't go off the trails in Yellowstone," and you don't want to put people in danger. People burn to death there all the time. They're constantly investigating things. So of course they contacted Forrest Fenn and had a back and forth. Of course. Why is that a surprise to Candy? Seriously, don't ever be a researcher, because that's terrible. You know, the same thing with, I don't want to really get into picking on people because that's not what I'm here for. But, a lot of people out there are more interested in drama and bullshit than they are in a solution. And give you plenty of people like that. That sunshine guy, he sounds bright. He talks a good talk. I challenged him on last video, but he's got me blocked. He won't do it because he doesn't have the intelligence to do it. He can't figure the poem out. You will not see him do an analysis like that because he'd embarrass himself. He probably doesn't know how to do it himself. What he does do good is narrate and read high level stuff, but he's not really bringing anything new to the game. Same thing with most of the other YouTube channels. They're not bringing anything new. It's all conspiracy. Ooh, I got some secret video of Forrest Fenn. Ooh, Forrest Fenn said something secret. Tune in now next week and I'll tell you. And they know very well that it's a marketing ploy. Most people are ignorant. And I don't really mean that in a bad way. I mean, ignorant just means that they're not educated on a specific topic. It doesn't mean that they're stupid, but they're ignorant. And they're also lazy. Most people realize that they're not capable of solving the poem. So instead of solving the poem, they hang around and find out if somebody's going to slip and somebody's going to drop information. And they're going to look at that and say, oh my God, that dummy didn't see this. I see it. I'm going to go get the chest. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but they're lurkers. They're not capable of any serious thought behind anything. So instead of saying that, they just lay low and watch what other people do. Now, of course, people are bringing attention because they're looking for controversy. They think Jack is up to no good. Jack did something illegal. I don't think there's a big conspiracy here. I really don't. The only conspiracy is why is Jack not saying anything? And I tried to go over that in the previous video. I think it's just a simple answer. One, either he doesn't really know to solve, he took it in from the back end. That's essentially what he's telling us if we listen to everything he said. Or two, he knew at least where to start because he's seen it online. I mean, there were a lot of good solves out there and a lot of bad ones. Anybody that does a solve, I want to see you do what I did and show me without modifying the poem, without doing any counting, without doing anything. Just modify the poem. Show me where there's coordinates in there. Show me where it says to use coordinates. Show me where you didn't have to go out of your way. I mean, the coordinate thing, they were skipping over words even. And they weren't counting those as coordinates. Why? Because they were biasing it to their place. And another person, the best one that I've seen is probably, the guy on that posts on Thor and Chase Chat and all over. He's got some really good theories that I found out where he is pointing out the 109 and the 43 and how it's related to Toyoa. He's the one who found that out. I took it a step further and I found out that not only is it related to Toyoa, but it has nothing to do with the chest being at Kerwin. But if you take everything he talks about in My War for Me and you transform those coordinates over to Kerwin, and then you mirror it. So in other words, when he says he was flying west, you're really flying northeast, not northwest, because we're mirrored it over to the other hemisphere, away from the other side of the world, away from Vietnam. And I did that, and I figured out where Forrest Fenn's special place is in Vietnam. And I've never shown anybody, but he emailed me to that effect. He told me, good, congratulations on your work. He didn't say I solved the poem. He didn't say anything about the remapping, but congratulations on the effort that you put forth and the research that you did. So essentially, and he said, you only made one mistake. And he said, the mistake that I made was that if you look at that old video of mine where I show it, I say that I don't believe for a minute that he flew to that waterfall because it was currently a hotspot in the war. And the only thing Forrest corrected me on was that he had intelligence briefings, so he knew where the hotspots were. So he knew it was safe to go there, and he actually did. But he congratulated me on everything else. And after that, I discovered that I did it wrong when I came to Kerwin. All of those coordinates, like I said, you flip them. And when you do that, guess where it takes you? You're looking at it. When he landed the helicopter, he would have landed it right up by the wheel, right, and he would have been throwing rocks down into this falls instead of Vietnam. I mean, this is exact, folks, exact. All I did was I took the same bearing. Let's say he flew 310 degrees. I forgot. I know where he flew, but let's say it was 300 degrees, okay, just for a number. So he was flying northwest, 300 degrees. Well, if you 300 degrees is 60 degrees away from true north. So if you wanted to mirror it across the y-axis, it would be 60 degrees. So instead of flying 300 west, you fly northeasterly, which is 60 degrees. And if you take the time that he flew and the range of the helicopter, and you drew that line, his special place would be right at the friggin' wheel. And the wheel would be Mang Yang Pass, the dangerous pass. It all maps up where he talks about burying Skippy in a standing position. That's how they buried the French at Mang Yang Pass in Vietnam that died during the French Indochina War. Now, the cross that Forrest tripped over was a grave marker that he admits was French. So all of the French military that die are buried and never cross the Lorraine, which is the double arm cross. That's what he tripped over. So if you turn it, like I said, you mirror that, it put you in the bighorn. I didn't want to get into that kind of stuff in this video because that's going outside the scope of the poem. But basically, what I've proven in part 1 and part 2 is that this solve is very straightforward. All you got to do is just figure out what the first stanza means. Okay, what is it telling you to do? And all it's there for is to tell you that you got to set up a certain condition and you got to find a word that's key. And the word that's key is treasure. So we got that. So now we're beginning it being the word treasure, and we're going to spell it down the canyon below the home, using the instructions below the Homer Brown. Stanzas 5 and 6 confirm what you've discovered. Try the wheel. So now we start the whole poem over again, except there is no longer the poem. This time there is the wheel. So as I've gotten alone in there, in the wheel, and with my treasure bold, everything hanging around the wheel. I keep my secret where? The wheel. And hint of riches new and old. How is he keeping the secret there? Well, he's taking all of his poem clues and matching them to historical cairns at the historical location. That information is going to be available for a million years. I mean, it's not going away. So all he had to do was come up with a clue that matches not what's on the ground, but what's in the sky. Okay, because that's what the whole point of the wheel is. And then when he says, look quickly down, you're looking down from the stars. And they are landing on top of A, B, C, D. Okay, those are the cairns. E is where you go to see the sun. You found the blaze. You look quickly down. It's like buying a 2x4 in Lowe's. When you look down the 2x4 to make sure it's not warped, you're pretending that your eye is the sun and you're looking down the direction the sun's going. And it's taking you along at roughly 242 degrees down, right over the falls and right to the intersection of the road that you got to put in on. Okay. And also the E cairn is the 22nd spoke when you count clockwise. And I showed you how you've been wise, how you got to go clockwise. The sign says walk left. It doesn't give you an option to walk right. You walk left. Now, I'm not saying you can't physically do it and somebody's going to go and beat the hell out of you. But I mean, if you're going to respect people and you want to go there and try the wheel, you're going to try the wheel. You're going to use the information on ground and apply it, right? But you got to use your imagination. It's more important than knowledge. But some of the knowledge that he relied on is boots on the ground. It's not all necessarily in the poem. But the poem does take you directly to the treasure. But he's relying on historical places. You don't think for a minute he would send you out in the middle of nowhere, 10 miles in the middle of the woods to get you killed. Or he's going to want you to go and break the law with your family and your children, get up in jail because you got to go and steal something from the national park. That's not what he's suggesting. And he said he left subtle hints and thrill of the chase. Well, my God, Yellowstone National Park is not subtle. The problem with the hints that people are reading, they're not reading the book properly. They're reading it at a high level and they're trying to find aberrations, just like Jack said, but they're finding their own aberrations. For example, Robert Redford didn't write a book. Everybody knows he did. And the same thing with him messing up the plots between A Farewell to Arms and For Whom the Bell Tolls. That's the obvious stuff. That's why he did that. He knew people were going to take that stuff and try to marry it to map. That's where everybody's wrong. They don't want to take the time to understand what is the poem really saying. And to do that, you do it like Jack said. I did it by working on the poem alone. And then I realized that, hey, not only will it lead me to the treasure, but if I really understand Forrest's writing, I now have the ability to locate the real hints in the book. But nobody wanted to do that. The hints are subtle. They're not that easy to spot. A huge percentage of that book is dedicated to Yellowstone, but that's not what's about it. You got to find out Jack put it best when he said, "You got to find out what Forrest Fenn would consider an aberration." And my God, Forrest Fenn hinted at that so many times. He told us how important it is. He said, "Use a dictionary." He talked about not knowing how to spell several. He talked about how he puts punctuation in the spots that he thinks is right. It doesn't break any rules, but the academics harp on him about it. He told us about how he abuses words, and he uses them in a grammatically incorrect fashion. So the whole intent of going through the poem and looking at the grammar is not to correct it. The whole intent of looking at the punctuation and the grammar is to read the poem exactly as Forrest written without inserting any of your bias. And I believe that my solution does that. There's no bias anywhere. I'm taking everything that's directly in that poem where he does the keyword part that leads us to the wheel. And then when I get to the wheel, I'm using everything that's in the poem and I'm marrying it to a map. Which map? Well, the map of the Bighorn Medicine Wheel. And I'm using information available on site to do that. Okay. It just takes a little bit of imagination. The only line that you really need to draw is the one away from the sun. But he's basically leading you by the hand down there. Now, he doesn't necessarily need to make an X because the canyon wall itself is going to make up the other part of the X. You're just following that line down there. It's pretty darn obvious where the chest would be. However, as I said, there's some things that I'm leaving out because I'm not going to give it to Jack because he ended up finding the ending by finding out where Forrest Fenn's going to die. Well, I guess you could kind of say that this is the same. Forrest Fenn wanted to die in the same spiritual way that the Indian would. I mean, folks, he spent his life collecting Indian stuff. That's really what the memoir is about. It's about the chase and the discovery and collecting things. Yellowstone was just a place that he might have done that, but it wasn't the place where he found his first artifact. Matter of fact, he didn't get any artifacts in there because technically you're not supposed to remove them. If you went in there and found an arrowhead, you ain't allowed to take it. You can go to jail for that. So, he found it in Texas, but who knows what he did? I mean, you're not even allowed to take gems, rocks, stones, gold. I mean, nothing, even if it's laying on the surface, if it's native to the area without permission. So, but anyway, I think in these past two videos, I've given a solve, and it's up to you to decide. But I haven't seen any solve that's similar to mine. Every solve that I look at, people are breaking into complicated ciphers. They're breaking lines down into homonyms. They're eliminating the punctuation. They're throwing in the grid and removing all the spaces. They're looking in all different directions for secret words, diagonal, vertical, but they're not showing me the important part. Show me where the poem is telling you to do that. Where I can show you where the poem is telling me to slide the lines. And I can even show you where the hints are to tell you to do that. I did it in this video. So you take your solve and you show me, where does it tell you to use GPS coordinates? Where does it tell you to count it? You just made that discovery. And now you've put yourself, you've enclosed yourself into self-bias where you think that that's how he did it. Forrest Fenn doesn't use coordinates and stuff. I mean, that's not his style. His style is to do it through his writing and through his stories, and that's what he's doing. And what other perfect way to do it than use the stories at one of the most sacred places that Indians consider, you know? And like I said, I think that he was, or he believes part of his healing was a spiritual thing. I really believe that. I believe he went on a vision quest here. I don't know that. Doesn't matter. Forrest said, when you see the final place, you may not even realize the significance of it to him. And that's, by the way, is another hint that you ain't going to find it by backdooring where he died. You know, I don't know why Jack said that. That might be how he did it. Kudos to him. That's a really difficult thing to do. How did I solve it? I just read the poem. But I read the poem in the way Forrest wrote it. I didn't add any bias. I really suggest you guys do the same and then take another look at these videos and make your own determination, because there ain't anybody alive that can confirm it, including Jack. Jack, in order to confirm or deny a solve, needs to come out with his own solve. And I too am going to come out with a book at some point with all this information in there and the real, you know, the stuff that I'm not telling you. And I never will tell anybody that stuff. A lot of it, my partners don't even know it. I'm keeping it myself. I want to see what Jack does next, but I wanted to put out enough out there to give you guys something that's extremely compelling, and maybe or maybe not, it'll give you closure. I don't know. But in my opinion, of course, I'm going to toot my own horn. There is no solve anywhere like this solve at all. And I'm not talking about just try to wheel, but no, I have not seen any solve anywhere where they describe in detail how the poem tells you to get there without using some weird trickery. Or they go and say, my war warm water salt at Madison Junction because two rivers come there. Yeah, okay. Explain it in deep. That doesn't cut it for me. Where is the poem telling you that? How is the poem telling you to go to Madison Junction? Explain it to me. And keep in mind, as Forrest said, there are many places where warm water salts, including south of Santa Fe. So show me where Madison Junction exists south of Santa Fe. It don't. Waterfalls do. I mean, watersheds do. Waterfalls do. Hot springs do. You know, geysers don't. Geyser-fed rivers don't exist anywhere in New Mexico. And I can't think of any two rivers in New Mexico that form the confluence of a third, and both of those two are based on geysers. They just don't exist. Can we find creeks and rivers, or creeks and streams that are hot stream fed in New Mexico that form the headwaters of rivers? Sure. In the Rockies? Sure. I mean, there's watersheds everywhere, and all of them are usually in a mountain somewhere. But if you really want to qualify your own solution, the first thing you got to do is take the poem and throw everything else away for now, and show exactly where the poem is telling you. You know, don't just say, "Well, I decided," because you're saying you decide. Show me where the poem indicates that where warm water salts is a lake. Show me where the poem says anywhere that the poem is. I mean, the place where warm water salts is Madison Junction. It doesn't. It's vague. And the way mine is showing me is it's telling me to try the wheel. I'm using the poem's instructions without any trickery or weird stuff. I'm reading it straightforward, doing exactly what it said, and it's revealing where warm water halts to me. So now I know where there is. So I go and I do it again, using that where warm water halts and fitting the clues to the closest spot that I can, and make sure that I'm fitting them not just with stupid things like, oh, I'm looking at Google Earth and this group of trees looks like a heart. No, I mean, no. Show me something solid. Show me, the actual name of a place, not in your head, or show me, like I showed you, all the cards are labeling physical things. They're physical things on the ground that represent something that's documented on site. I'm not just making this stuff up. And if you do this, if you can't do the same with yours, your solve is clearly wrong. You know. So anyway, I had to put that rant in there just based on the stuff that I see because it's annoying. Another thing that kind of annoys me is when I read stuff out there, and one guy actually had the audacity to say other people are stealing our solve, and I went and looked at his solve, and his solve started with try to wheel, which we all know is from Sam Smith. So don't make that claim when you're out taking other people's ideas too. You didn't do that. Just mention it. Be a man. It's public information. This is nothing new. Be a man. You know, I mean, I'm not the first one to search at the wheel, and neither is Sam. But it's pretty well known where the wheel, try the wheel came from. Don't try to claim it was your own. You know, so far the two groups that I know went to the spot. Both of them gave Sam credit, which is good. That's what they should do. But what they did is they made an ending that was different from ours. Mine. We don't know whose ending is right. It could be mine. It could be the guy Bob's. It could be Suzanne Stanner's. It could be Jack. I don't know if Jack was even there. And Team X could be their ending. You know, we don't know. That's the part we don't know. But at least those people had the balls and the guts to say, yeah, I based it on that. Because it is the most solid thing out of all the crazy theories that we had throughout the chase history. And the main reason why everybody failed to believe Sam Smith is because they have a hard time believing that where warm water salt may not have anything to do with water salting or water. And that's the point. Forrest Fenn, it doesn't matter what you think. Forrest Fenn wrote the poem, and he purposely made the first clue or the first few clues hard to understand. I mean, otherwise it would have been found in a day. If it was as simple as going to get a map without first deciphering the clues, just go to a map, somebody would have found it because everybody went for the low hanging fruit. Angel Fire or Aquafria or, Yellowstone or Madison Junction or yada, yada, all the millions of places that people keep mentioning over and over. Flaming Gorge, Dinosaur National Park. Everybody's in the same place all the time. Oh, where's your own Brown? Molly Brown and this and that. Oh, it's Brown and this guy's name is Brown. No, you can't marry any of the clues to the poem until you figure out the starting point. I mean, you can't marry any of the clues to a map till you know the starting point. And what Forrest did, and he said there's one important thing that nobody ever considered. What if I put the starting point right in the poem? He didn't say that. But he did. He put treasures. It's bold. It's in your face. The first stanza that everybody ignores, including Toby. That's just legalese. Or he's just telling you that he hid a treasure chest. No, he's not. That's the whole book told you that. Those 6 stanzas all have a meaning, and it has nothing to do with legal stuff. The legal parts, if there are any, come into play when you get the chest or when you find a proxy. Either way. That's why he says, I give you title to the gold. He doesn't say, I give you the gold, I don't give you the gems. And it gives you a title to the gold on the final step. So there's something that only Jack knows because he's the one who got the chest. I don't know what that is. He don't tell you because he knows when you get there and find it, you'll know what that thing is that was in there that he never told anybody about. So that thing alone proves that Jack's the finder. It just doesn't prove that he solved the poem. Like I said, it goes against everything Forrest's been telling us. So anyway, you guys, have a nice holiday. Oops. Wait, I don't want to be politically correct. Have a very Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. God bless you and your family. Be safe. Be cool. Subscribe. Click like. Have a great time. Peace.